Доброго дня всім. Вітаю вас ще раз. Ми продовжуємо говорити в рамках проєкту Cyber Pills Following the Deep. Коротко я би підсумував те, що у нас було вчора. Вчора ми говорили про Бруно Латура, говорили про різного роду трактування і спроби якось зрозуміти, де ми є в сучасній ситуації, пов'язані з нашої нас з планетою. Ми пробували думати і бачити, як в рамках нової епохи геологічної антропоцену, де ми є, ким ми є, і як нам насправді краще жити серед цих різного роду живих і неживих агентів, акторів, які оточують нас. І що ж нам робити в тій ситуації, коли людина надто вже вибудувала дуже жорстку вертикаль і достатньо так впевнено, потихеньку захопила цю планету і не дає їй шансу нормально жити і багатьом іншим істотам тут. Сама подія проходить співорганізаторами є CyberPills і станція Лем Station, а також нашим основним партнером є інститут Адама Міцкевича, який допоміг нам також зреалізувати і залучити чудових людей, чудових професіоналів з Польщі. Отож, сьогодні ми будемо мати 3 невеликих події. Зараз ми розпочнемо з лекції Пьотра Целінського, хоч з маленьким запізненням. О 17:20 у нас буде така собі артист-ток з Дмитрієм Булатовим, лекцію, яку вчора ми могли чути і насолоджуватись. І о 19:30 у нас буде перформанс Юрка Булки, який пов'язаний з містом, річкою, яку ще в 19 столітті загнали львів'яни загнали під землю, і ця річка тепер є частиною нашої каналізації. І немає шансу, на жаль, найближчим часом. Отож, ми розпочинаємо з лекції Пьотра Целінського. Вона називається «Тіла, наступний, медіа, рубіж». І коротко про Пьотра. Пьотр є доктором філософії і доцентом факультету політичної науки і журналістики в Університеті імені Марії Кюрі-Склодовської. Є теоретиком цифрових медіа, автором, аніматором, культури та куратором. Також є видавцем, редактором різного роду інтерфейсів і таких видань, як «Цифрові технології, комунікації», «Культурні, коди цифрових технологій», а також проєкту, в якому я колись брав участь, «Mindware. Технології діалогу». Також це книги «Цифровий код та бази даних», і Пьотр також є співзасновником та членом правління фонду Інституту цифрової культури. Отож, так як в Пьотра не найліпше працює інтернет-мережа, і ми сидимо, і, зокрема, він також в локдауні, в червоній зоні, в одному з міст Польщі, поряд з Любліном, то ми маємо записане відео його лекцій, але він буде онлайн, і після лекції ми зможемо в нього ще запитати кілька запитань. Отож, зараз я прошу включити Пьотра і чекаємо, насолоджуємося, думаємо, сприймаємо.
Hello everyone, this is Piotr Celinski from Lublin speaking. I would like to thank you for inviting me, thank you for having me. This is actually a wonderful time to have this kind of general approach to reality opportunity, because I guess COVID is actually, and the pandemic situation is actually overwhelming all of us, and we need to find a chance to think in a different way, find a chance to find a different perspective. And I guess my point of view on relationship between bodies, media, transmissions and digital culture would be like at some point an extension of what we could say about COVID and pandemic, but also on the other hand a kind of more like a futuristic prediction of what actually is in front of us when it comes to media civilization, media culture. So that's why my talk would be, it is called The Body's Next Media Frontier. I guess the bodies are the most underestimated part of our communicational environment. I guess the bodies are somehow rejected by the whole idea of emancipation, of whole idea of symbolic culture. When they were brought by the civilization and culture of enlightenment, that's why we are actually thinking less of them than we should. And I guess at some point the switch between the change of our perspective on this issue will be quite significant, because the technological development, the development of media interfaces, development of media systems is actually proving us that the bodies are really significant when it comes to data producing, when it comes to politics of our senses, politics of our imagination as well. So I will be dividing this talk, mixing my own image as you can see it right now, with some slides that I got. But I guess the images, especially those one showing our bodies, are really, really important when in communication. Even in media communication, it is really crucial to have this opportunity to look at your opponent, to look at your interlocutor, to have this chance to actually see his face, recognize his voice, recognize his manners, and this is really important. At the same time, I guess the borderline of our technologies, the borderline between us as it was set up by the technological forms, like the screen, like the camera, like the microphone, is all we can talk about when it comes to modern communication, when it comes to modern media culture. We will also try to take a look at some art examples. We will take a look at some theoretical approaches to the issues. My point of view is media centered, and it goes with media theories as well. This is the kind of interdisciplinary approach to the understanding of media culture, when you try not to only think about the devices itself, but it's more about the general understanding of what are the relations between culture, technologies, and human beings, and of course human abilities to communicate, human sensibilities to what could be done in a way we would like to get impression on each other, get to know each other, get to understand each other. So my starting point is that the relations between the bodies and the culture have a long history, dating back from the very beginning of our civilization. It was always about the control over the bodies, not only the control that we can establish ourselves on our own bodies, but also the control of external world and other people over our bodies. Of course, when it comes to thinking about bodies, we need to distinguish at least two perspectives that were developed in our culture. First one was the historical one that says that human beings are actually just human beings. It's no need to distinguish between the body and the mind. This is more like enlightened way of dealing with things. And of course, the other one is the enlightened one, the one that shows that after the Cartesian, we think of our bodies as a separate forms of who we are, separated from what we really are, which is the mind, right? So we get the distinction between mind and the body. And from this distinction comes the idea of mediation reality that only shows the interpretations and signs and symbols of reality, which is the media itself. And on the other hand, there is this reality which is similar to body, which can be like left behind and can be not put in the center of our understanding of what actually is going on. So the body means similar things as material world in general. So it's not necessary to be material to be a part of what's going on. It's not necessary to be physical, to be chemical, to be organic, to be a part of the world, unless we get our souls, our minds that are able to emancipate from the bodies and are able to actually produce meanings, to produce communicational events and procedures, and to like allow us to be fully like immersed into the world of communication, into the world of symbolic communication. So my point actually is that I believe that this process is actually unstoppable. I guess we will never stop with colonizing our bodies. We will never stop with putting something inside our bodies. And on the other hand, my point is also that why don't we think about the bodies as a kind of most fundamental, most important orientation point for our cultural life? I might sound a bit conservative when I'm actually referring to the bodies, because I understand that this kind of approach means that, okay, we need to criticize media culture, we need to criticize symbolic values, we need to criticize emancipation of the mind and human identity. But I'm not against it, and I will not try to convince you that it's wrong. But I just want to say that in contemporary media culture, it is really important to actually take a look at the bodies, because the bodies are being really in a visible way. They are being connected to technologies. They are being used by the technological machines to actually produce data, to get the knowledge about the human being, and also to manipulate our organs and our minds just by bypassing the access to us, bypassing the real senses, the natural senses, and also trying to avoid our conscious opinions and critical opinions about it. Of course, this kind of input into our bodies will not stop with vaccines. And of course, I'm not going to talk about vaccines either. You can see at the movie here that we are, as a civilization, able to be to enter the really fundamental structures of our bodies, which is like, for example, the human egg, containing all of the DNA necessary to get the newborn done. And also, as you can see, we can manipulate this kind of really small structures, really microstructures of our life, of our chemical and physical identities. And as you can see, it's quite easy to actually change this those structures just by using the needle, just by input some genetic materials, genetic informations into the system of those tiny creatures. Is it also how is it connected to media? Of course, and it is connected to media because we don't have the direct approach, direct gate that we could actually connect technology to the bodies. We need senses, we need skin, we need tissue. All of those are quite significant because this is kind of natural constitution of human body, a kind of natural way that we are actually existing in the world, and this is our reference point as well. So when we look at world, when we understand how we understand world, how we understand each other, how we feel in the world, depends heavily on our senses, on our ability to actually react to the signals coming from the external environment. But I also guess that we got this huge dream driving our culture from the very beginning, and it's of course unstoppable as well. The media culture dream, which means that at some point we've established instruments and machines and tools that were enabling us to understand the world better and to rule the world better. So it is most of all a kind of output situation that we were believing, that we still believe that to reach the essence of reality means to use the technological extensions, and it's efficient, and it's a good way to actually deal with reality, with material reality, with other people. Some say it is also about Vorsprung durch Technik, right? It's a kind of general statement precising that we can only get things done better than others when we are actually using some advanced technologies, when we are using better technologies than the others have. So Vorsprung durch Technology means that we are better because we use technology. We can do more things, we can do things better by using technological extensions. This is also a constitution for the media civilization. The extensions means in media theory, for the guys like McLuhan and this kind of technological determinism approach means that we build our media to be able to reach the reality better, to reach deeper, to reach higher, to reach in a more precise way. And also, there is another concept coming from the media theory in general, the concept of tactility. So it is not only about reaching, it is also about tactility, which means touching things, which means being able to make things, to direct things, to make things obedient, to make things like more useful for us just by touching them. But this touch doesn't mean to be a physical one. It could also be a symbolic one. When I touch the object, it moves and it changes because I use technologies, because I use media. And it's also about the design, it's also about the usability and user ability to actually make things done. We're not going to discuss this right now. So it was all based, this whole output situation was all based, it is still all based on the idea that we are safe because our natural boundaries are senses, cognition, skin, organic chemistry, and physics, and it's untouchable. It's actually, I'm in the center of the world, and my boundary is my body, and nobody will actually get through this boundary, and I will still stay safe. I will stay in a way that I am. Like in direct control of what's going on with me, and by feeling safe of who I am, and I'm actually unapproachable and nobody can get into me. But I guess my point is also that we can no longer feel safe. It's it's naive to feel safe in the modern times, in the times when we got biomedia, when we got biotechnologies, when we got advanced medicine technologies that are actually all, and also biochemical technologies that are also that are all trying to actually get under our skin, get above our senses, trying to bypass all the organic, let's just call them all the natural mechanisms and boundaries that we have, and about which we were thinking that it's undisputed, are protected, and are always safe and not to be crossed. But there is also another dream, another part of this media cultural dream of media technologies. The one that says that, well, okay, if we can reach the world around, that means we could also be touched by the technologies. It's the price that we pay for the interactivity, the price that we need to pay for the situation in which we go outside of our bodies, we touch the world, we change the world just by using media. But so many people are just trying to reverse this idea. So why don't we touch what is inside of our bodies? Why don't we try to manipulate what is actually right behind the natural boundaries that I just mentioned? By bypassing those boundaries, first we are actually just go with this Cartesian idea of dualism between body and soul, body and mind, and we like just treat our body as a technological playground, as a technological and scientific playground, trying to make our bodies even better than they were before. It is now that danger when we consider this as just personal sphere, right? It is more important and it is also more interesting for me when we consider this kind of input approach as a more political and social way of dealing with things. And of course, states, institutions, and cultures were always interested in making our body obedient, in making our bodies like the resources for the cultural recycling of things. So our bodies were meant to be a part of the culture, a part of the media environment. We like spend lots of money and ideas and hours of work of actually establishing this kind of exchange between the external world and the bodies, unapproached by the conscious, unapproached by the identity, unapproached by the will in general. So the essence of this input culture would be to find a way of establishing technological bypass of our natural boundaries. And I guess we all know those words like cyborgs, posthumans, transhumans, feminists, cyber feminists, or maybe just remote control over our bodies, enabling us as a data, just running us as a data producer. So at the very end of this idea, there is this at the very end of this reality, there's this idea of transforming body into data producing element of cyberculture. A body as a data provider, and it goes both ways. It goes with the personal data usage of what's going on inside of us, and that's at this point it is quite amazing what we can do with observing our body and using the data that we could find in it to actually make our life better. Like, for example, you know how many walks, how many steps you took per day. You know what your heart is actually, in what condition is your heart, and how many beats per hour it can go with. And then there is this social cultural way, which I'm afraid of, and I guess we could call this part of this input strategy. We could call it a colonization of the bodies by the media culture, by the technological culture of our reality. And I guess we will be talking about it a bit more. Let me illustrate this dream for you, because as I promised, we could talk about the media art, we could talk about some examples of media culture. Here you see the Shiruku Road by the artist Kijo Rokaku. It's from the early 90s. The work of art is actually this is a collection of the pieces of art that actually is trying to make the world more reachable by our senses, by our natural senses. So you can see the extensions of the human ears, extensions of the human eyes, and also extensions of other senses, and those senses combined. It was always a dream to feel more, to know more about the reality, to see more and to hear more, because it was always about knowledge about reality. So if we know more, then we safer. We know more. We know first. We know better, then we are in a better position than our neighbors, than the people around us. So this dream actually goes on, and it's still very, very important. And I guess we could actually understand this dream just by referring to all the media culture in general. Here we get another example. This one is actually the more historical one. It's the part of the artistic project by Yves Klein called The Surfaces and Blocks of Pictorial Sensibility from the 50s and 60s of the last century, when the artist, a painter, was trying to make images more like tactile structures, more like structures that are actually inviting us to feel more by touching than just understand the concept by looking. So it's not enough when you look at the picture, it's also necessary for you to touch the picture, to feel the structure of the paint, to feel the position of the elements, and also to try to understand it deeper, just because using variety of senses of your also communicational strategies. And when it comes to modern culture, contemporary culture, pop culture, we could take a look at some video clips that we could all see on the YouTube or somewhere else. This one was actually has generated like almost a few hundred millions of views and reactions on YouTube. And I've chosen this one because the still from the video actually shows the strategy that hip hop music and electronic music nowadays actually explore in a really fascinating way. So you can see a naked body being actually colored with some paints, with some oil paints, and you get this feeling that this is all about colors. You get this feeling that this is all about tactility of images. But I mean the tactility is like in a really simple way, where the actually colors are touching your body, your senses. Color are actually trying to get under your skin, and the color does actually one of the really important factors that allows your body to actually glow to the world, to actually be present in the world. So unless you colored, you don't exist. You don't exist. You don't have a right to talk, because when you use the colors, when you use the media strategy, then you are able to talk, and also you are able to feel in the right way. So the boundary here, as you can see, is really close to the body. Even in a popular culture, we understand it like this. We need to go deeper with our senses. We need to go and find the truth in our culture, the right expressions, the right situations, the right signals. And then at the same time, we need to allow our bodies to be like as close as it is possible. So we need to be able to like get dirty with the culture around, get dirty with the images in general. And of course, the culture is also a sum of our fears and a sum of our predictions about what will happen if we do so. And as you may remember, we got lots of popular culture expressions showing us that, okay, let's not go too far. Let's be clever about it. If we look too much, then we will have this risk of losing our sight. Then we will have this risk of actually be cut by the technological events. And I guess those pictures from the pièce andaluzyjski are really important commentary, one of the first important commentaries about how the technologies is trying to colonize our bodies, colonize our senses, how the technologies are trying to get under the skin. And this for me is a kind of simple way of creating a critical conscious and critical imagination about what will happen in the future when we will not be, when we will not be conscious about it, and we will just go with the technological flow, and we will not think about it in a critical way. We will not try to make some boundaries. We will not try to make the distance that is necessary for us to understand the reality, thanks to our senses, thanks to our natural abilities of approaching and understanding the reality, the material reality. And there is another example of our predictions of being what is actually wrong with going too far with technological development. We all know Neo from the famous Hollywood movie Matrix, the Neo that at some point was blinded by the technological system, right? The technological system of digits, of images, at some point blinded him and make his eyes sick to the level of actually losing the sight for good. And of course, the alien, which is one of the most important shapes that we recognize in popular culture. It's actually about the aliens that will come and that will eat our ability to look at the world, look at the aliens in a distant way, in a way that we could actually protect ourselves from the influence of those ugly creatures. And I guess the alien first task was to blind the person, was to actually make the person unable to make any physical moves, any conscious physical moves. And then the alien was about to enter the body just by going deep into the structures of organic matter. So first is the loss of sight and loss of hearing, and also loss of taste and loss of ability to move. And then we're done, because this is the boundary that external world needs to cross when it wants to, be a part of human body, and also be a ruler of a human body. So alien, as we know, were able to get inside the body, make the body obedient, make the body like in order when it comes to all the tasks that it imagines that we supposed to do. The same strategy actually goes with the digital culture in our reality. I mean, let's take a look at one of the most popular examples of the future interfaces. Well, it's not enough to sit in front of the computer. It's not enough to actually be a part of this screen-to-screen conversation. It is better when it is better if it's available for us to actually go deeper and to go into more dimensional world of cyber culture, which means that why don't we just join the movement of our body with what we see, with what we hear, with how we act, with what we can do on the screen, and finally with what we can do, what is on the other side of the screen, which is the reality itself. So we are actually using the cameras, we're using the microphones, we're using the keyboards and other sophisticated interfaces of the gaming world or of the medical world to make the reality in order that we are trying to make. So we make the reality itself. We are able to manipulate the matter. In fact, we are able to manipulate the matter by manipulating information, by manipulating interfaces, by establishing connections and making databases, and also making the whole environment for the gestures and acts like this one. So I guess on this picture you can see the quite happy guy, the guy being immersed by the virtual technologies, the guy being immersed by the whole idea of what he can do with these technologies. At the same time, for me, the most important part, as I said, is what actually we can see on the picture, which is his eyes, his ears, his sense of the movement. These are all boundaries that were crossed by the technological world. So it's actually unprotected. His body and actually his human condition is unprotected right now. He's forced by the technological imaginations and interfaces to go along with this game, to go along with this idea of being immersed into technological world. And I guess it's quite a complicated situation for us, because at one hand it's really hard not to go into, not to follow these wonderful ideas of being immersed, of being connected with reality just by the technology. And on the other hand, our safety is at risk at the moment. Our safety is at the fundamental manipulation at this very moment, because when we are, the more we are immersed in this way, in an interactive way, the more our body is being exposed to the technological environment in general. As we all know, behind the technologies, behind the games, behind the interfaces, there are always people who are having those good or bad intentions, who are trying to make as much profits as they can from this situation. And for me, this is this point of crossing between the world, between the internal constitution of who we are and external worlds of different things that we should, on one hand, being in fear of, and on the other hand, okay, why don't we just explore them in every possible way that we could ever have. Nevertheless, let's just okay. This is the proof that it was always about the dream that has two sides. First, we were from the very beginning really curious and interested in what's going on in our bodies, in what's going on in inside of the living matter. How do we coordinate who we are? How do we know how do we find the knowledge, recognize the knowledge of reality? But then we should not forget about the enlightened idea of human body as a machine, right? As an industry palast, as we can see on the picture in the middle. The human body as an industry palast means that, okay, it is not only about the body as it is, it's mostly about the body as a machine itself. So at this point, there is no distinction. There could be no difference between the external media and the internal media. What we can do, of course, is to be precise and sublime when it comes to recognizing the living patterns, the natural mechanisms inside of our bodies. But they definitely are similar to what we do with the external world. So reaching the external world means that we could also reach the internal world of ours. Technology should be similar. Technologies should be, technologies should be, those technological systems should be similar and should be like copies of each other. And of course, we've just started this just with the simple technologies that just allowing us to take a look under the skin. As you can see here, the Vine Viewer Vision is the really efficient tool for making our vines visible for the technology, for the interface. The second step would here be definitely the one about trying to manipulate those veins as we could see them. So that's the historical parallel showing us that the interest that goes inside our bodies is always the interest that is mediated. It's always the interest that is being technologized and informationalized by the same imaginations that we use for communication, for mediating with the reality in general. Okay. Well, I've decided also to show you this kind of simple illustration, the one from MIT technology review. At some point, they published a report on the biotechnologies, of course, in the context of CRISPR technologies that allows us to manipulate the DNA structures, RNA structures. And I guess this picture shows perfectly clearly that we are entering the stage of our culture in which the whole life structures, the whole life mechanisms are now exposed to the technological realms, to the technological forces. And I guess of course it goes from the DNA manipulation and ends up with the really sophisticated surgical procedures that allows us to remove the heart and replace it with some technological devices, and also that allows us to go inside the brain and to, let me just show you the picture, inside the brain, and to make this brain obedient, make this brain fully operational, according to information that are coming from abroad, right? Like that are coming from the external world. So first you go under the skin, you plug the device onto your brain, and then you just use the cable to give the instruction to the brain for the brain to proceed in a manner, in a way that you would like to. Of course, I'm simplifying it. It's not that simple yet, thankfully. But here you see some possible future scenarios. Now it's just for the medical purposes, but in the near future, I guess it would be also about controlling the life in general. We could go inside our brains and take a look at different media through different media technologies to find the emotions in the brain activity. We are really close to digitize the whole human connectome project, which is about finding connections between every single neural nerve inside of our head. So this is like not far from now. But let me go back to some theoretical assumptions and points right now, because I guess we are really close to summarize the lecture, and we will be like to soon go more into discussion than trying to listen only for what I got to say. So my generalization of those media processes would be like in the past, the media, the media were external technologies enabling communication, but mostly in a way of downloading things. So the media of the past was actually, the historical media was mostly about watching, hearing, actually approaching things and downloading information. And the body in this order were a kind of referential substance in public appearances and actions. The body was the most significant definition of who we are and what we are capable of doing. And so in the presence now we get the situation that media are actually internal and external interactive technologies. So they are allowing us to upload and download informations. Of course, I'm talking about the difference between mass media and social media, but I'm also mostly talking about the download media versus interactive media. So the interactive part of the media is really crucial for what we can do, what we should do with the media. And the body inside of this system is becoming technologically expanded and mapped substance that is being deconstructed by us and also by our culture. So it's we allow technological devices to go inside our skin. Many kinds of, like the resonance, that those really crucial medical technologies that are being used in every hospital. I'm not talking about needle, of course, only. But I guess the most important part of what we're talking about here is the future, when the media will become technological senses that will be able to replace our organic ones. And of course, at the same time, body will become a kind of substance, a kind of molecular database, and also a kind of haptic interface. Molecular database because everything that is happening inside of our bodies, which we then used to call who we are, identity, constitution of our human beings, could be read by the technologies, could be mapped by the technologies, could be translated into database by the technological instruments that we will use, and then at the same time we will allow technologies to touch our bodies. So the tactility of the media will be reversed right now, which means that the tactility of the media. When it comes to touching the world, will be now the tactility of interface, the tactility of media that allows us to touch our bodies and our organs, not only by us but also by the rulers of technological world. Here you see some foam. I'm trying to make the noises away. I'm not sure whether it's working or not. Just you will let me know in the discussion. So going next is my attempt to actually also try to give you a kind of dictionary to describe what will happen with the body and under the regime of molecular database structures, and also under the most significant regime of the future connections between the state and media technologies, which is called, of course, surveillance capitalism. So I guess we are traveling from the mediated bodies to the moment when we will find our bodies as a molecular databases under the surveillance capitalism. And I guess body as a database means that we will be scanning and mapping those bodies not only by medical procedures all the time. So thermal cameras will be watching us when we are entering the stores. Of course, we will have some medical procedures. Of course, we are using some personal devices like smartphones and computers and other home sensors to monitor our bodies, to monitor our bodily functions. And then so we can all make those data connected with databases, saved as databases. Another step would be to index the bodies, to find the logic behind those databases. It's not enough to scan and map the natural structures and the body functions. It's also important to actually index those information, to tag this information, to build a meta level of database, metadata. And at the same time, the final step would be to learn how to program the bodies. It started with gene sequencing, and it will not finish soon. It will go even deeper. We have this slide over here showing that UK becomes first country in the world to approve using genes of 3 parents in one single egg, and we will have lots more of this kind of bodily treatments or organic treatments. And then we get this whole idea and whole reality of thinking of body as an interface. And of course, it's mostly about interactions. So, as I said, the price of our electronic freedom, the price of our digital ability to work with things, with data and with material things, the price for interaction is that's the idea of the idea of interaction is always about going both ways. First is to reaching out the world, and the second is to being a subject of someone else's reaches. And that means we will be in a situation when our senses are going to be bypassed by the prostheses, by the augmented bodies, by the cyber bodies, by the ideas of emancipated bodies, or ideas of the emancipated mind, which is, for example, the idea of artificial intelligence, of course. And then when it comes to thinking about body as an interface, it of course goes with the whole scientific approach to the parts of the body, to the organs of the body, but also to the electric current schemes inside of our body, chemical reactions that are actually happening inside of our body, and physical stuff that is actually going on, gravity and orientation, and of course in this orientation in the space, and of course the moving abilities of our bodies. And then when we consider body as an interface, it of course goes with the upload, download, and remix structures and situations that we know from the cultural life, from the soft cultural life. It was just only connected with the information for a very long time. It could be now used as a technique, as an approach to organic matter, like the CRISPR. This procedure of gene editing is, of course, just one of the examples that we could use in this context. Trying to finish up this whole speech, let me just give you some theoretical solutions to the problem. Let me just give you, because we were mostly talking about technologies and future possible scenarios. Let's just have a look at the terms, at the theories that are actually supporting us with this kind of approach. Okay, we got first this naive cyber optimism from the 90s, the one, like, for example, by Nicolas Negroponte, who were optimistic, really totally optimistic about switching from atom to bits, and those bits were everything and atoms were only just the history for him. So when we translate our civilization from atom to bits, then we will become fully operational when it comes to digital culture, when it comes to algorithmic solutions to the material problem. When 10 years after Olivier Grau, one of the most important media art critician and analytic, wrote his book Virtual Art: From Illusion to Immersion, he was also suggesting that actually virtual art is only the beginning. The illusion and then immersion is just the starting point of the long way that we go from just looking and hearing to the images and sounds to the real connection with the matter of art, real connection with the matter of media. At the same time, Mitchell, who is one of the most significant visual culture analytic, said that the pictorial turn that happened will at some point become an image science and biopictorial turn, which means that at some point we will have bioimages that we should recognize, that we should try to analyze and to think of. Those biopictorial turn, that biopictorial turn will be about unity between the human body and the images, the technological images that we can think of. So the difference will be smaller and smaller and smaller, and the unity between those two will be rising up to the level when the human body and the image politics will not be different from each other at all. And then we got the biopolitical screen concept by Pasi Vallejo, the concept of politics going into the philosophy and the reality of screens. Games affect players by modulating the brain's basic cognitive ability to predict and anticipate coming events. Okay, so the game strategy is mostly a strategy used by the government, by the biopoliticians to make our bodies a game field, a real game environment where the system actually changes our affect abilities, our cognitive structures, etc. And then, after all, we could go even deeper into the history of cultural theories. And then there is Frederick Jameson, who understood media as the new expansion of multinational capital that ends up penetrating and colonizing those very pre-capitalist enclaves, which are, of course, the nature and the unconscious, which offered extraterritorial and Archimedean footholds for critical effectivity, cognitive mapping. So I guess when we get rid of those natural boundaries, when we cancel the idea of body as a, the first and the most important line of defense against not only, COVID, but also against the media strategies, the interactive strategies of digital culture, then cognitive mapping and, of course, biological mapping would be, biochemical mapping would become those really important political strategies that will make our bodies more vulnerable to the external world, that make our bodies fully operationally obedient to those who are actually able to make those technologies that sophisticated, those who owns those technologies, and also to the state that supports that kind of developments, and they are, of course, are willing to have a part in that kind of reality. I guess I got just one more thing to say at the very end. I was thinking about showing you some more examples of those political activity of states and companies, but I hope those images are trying to they will defend themselves in front of your eyes. Let me just say at the very end that what we can do about it? I guess, is there any chance for us to get out of this oppression, get out of this biopolitics of using media against our bodies and against our subjectivities in general? There is another cultural theoretician, Joanna Drucker, who coined the term material performativity. And of course, it's about bridging the gap between the bodies and the minds, leaving this Cartesian way of thinking far behind us, trying to look at our bodies in a way that this is really our constitution. This is who we are. We cannot separate our bodies from our mind. It's like stupid idea to think of. There is no thought outside of us. There is no possibility of us thinking things outside of our bodies. There is no possibility of our bodies living without us thinking in a conscious or unconscious way. So why just not to, try to build new bridges, try to find different roads, try to find connections between those two, and try to be smart about it in a way that it was before, that it could, of course, be a part of our future. And there is another guy, really interesting one. The guy is called Matt Kirschenbaum, and this his idea of immateriality as a symbolic way of dealing with media reality should be covered by another approach called the forensic materiality and formal materiality. So let's not talk about that the media are only about information and symbolic and virtual stuff. The media, it's mostly, it's also about hardware, it's also about material things, it's about interfaces, it's about interactions. All of those dimensions of mediated world are important and are a part of, and should be a part of our consideration when it comes to thinking about the future of digital culture, thinking about the future of media culture in general. At the very, very end, there's this thing called morphological freedom, and it's a kind of punk movement against what we can find in the dominating political narrations and also technological narrations. Morphological freedom are people, I just don't really know who they are, but I guess it doesn't matter. Just the idea is really important one. Morphological freedom is all about we would like to express ourselves through what we transform ourselves into. We change as humans not because we are unhappy about who we are, but rather because we desire to become better. Self-transformation is not a search for some imaginary state of perfection, as is sometimes suggested, but rather an open-ended process. As we grow as people, our ideals and values also grow and change. So my guess would be, I'm not trying to say that, okay, let's stop all the technology, let's try to stop all the technological devices to actually go under the skin, to actually manipulate the part of our material constitution. Let's stop the companies from using our bodies and countries from allowing those companies to use our bodies. Another take on this problem would be to, why don't we open our bodies a bit more? Why don't we try to build an open knowledge about what's going on, just by trying to use what's actually happening on our own behalf. So those companies, they do own things. Those governments, they got own interests, but there are also us who are able to actually get something out of this situation, get the knowledge out of those processes. And this is where the media are actually coming back in this more positive way, because we need media to do so. We cannot do things without technological help. We cannot do things without technological sophistication. So my guess would be that we should maybe not allow politicians and engineers and companies be the only ones that are having this possibility to get under our skin. Why don't we take a part in this process? Why don't we be smart about it? Why don't we be, even naive about it, but still trying to do something about it? And I guess that would be all from me. Hopefully you are not asleep yet. Hopefully you are trying to use your bodies during this lecture. I guess our bodies needs to be considered a bit more influential, a bit more important, a bit more really like the fundamental ones, not only because, as I said, not only because COVID, but also because of what will happen in the future, how we design the future of media and media communication in general. That would be all for me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Looking forward to have this chance to talk to you about it. But for now, that would be all for me. Thank you and take care. Stay healthy.
Hi, Piotr. Thanks for the lecture. I must just really, at the beginning, admit that we are very fit to another one, to the next which follows. But still, I do have a lot of comments from Human Genome Project up to the transplantation of organs, which are actually one of those in the United States who are regulated by authorship patents and owned by different companies, which also makes very strong ethical problems and questions for the future. But also, I maybe would ask you only one thing about more CRISPR, and I'm familiar to such a biohacker named Josiah Zeiner. He's head of the company which titles Odin, and located in the United States. And he actually one of those who are being pushed and limited by different like medicine drug companies who are producing different also different tools for CRISPR and other labs, because he makes them like hundreds times, sometimes like really 100 times cheaper, which are like, I mean, for some needs might be more than enough. You don't need to pay like $20,000 just something that you may have for 200, for example. So, but still, he's being pushed, and all the time they really attacking him from different sides. But the practice of these bio hackers is just really strong. But one of them recently died during making this Facebook streaming when he injected himself with some biocombination and so on. So how do you think that this possibility of this another very capitalistic approach to do this and to spread this biohacking labs across the humans, different cities, which actually are growing in number?
I guess my point is mostly about that. Should we have our bodies open to the technological experiments? Should we at some point stop the logic of technological development from going deeper and deeper under our skin, going to they are bypassing more and more our senses, trying to replace all the natural mechanisms that we have to actually understand the reality, to communicate with others. And of course, my answer is we cannot stop these developments. We cannot stop this kind of approach. But the thing we can actually discuss, the thing we can make a topic for public debate is actually whether should it be with our consent, or should we be like somehow protected from this kind of manipulations, from this kind of politics? Because I guess of course we're discussing this issue in a very sophisticated environment. I mean, all of us are actually a big technological fans and also specialists, and then we got lots of things to say and lots of problems to discuss regarding this issue. But of course, there are others who has not this chance to understand those processes, who has not this chance to actually be a part of the debate, of the discussion. They will be only those bodies that are being colonized by the technological powers, and this is what I'm afraid of. Let's not have this as a social process without debating it first, without trying to make some laws, without trying to make some boundaries first.
Thanks a lot. It was nice to have you. So we will have to stop and your lecture and go further. So thank you again. It's
my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to visit Lviv in a more, bodily way.
Please come. Yeah. І тож я би ще хотів додати, що за кілька хвилин у нас розпочинається з невеликим запізненням, але зустріч і розмова з Дмитрієм Булатовим, тому залишайтесь на зв'язку.